Let's do it. Do it.
All right, good evening, ChangePoint. Welcome to the 6 p.m. pre-Commons,
Pre-service comments.
also known as that show.
What they said.
I am joined by none other than Mr. Tony Murrow and Mr. Keone, Eric Knight.
What up?
We are glad that you guys are with us tonight. We hope that you've had an amazing Independence Day weekend. In fact, if you're up for it, tell us who you are, tell us where you're at, and tell us if you had any cool 4th of July memories or stuff, traditions, whatever you guys do. We'd love to hear from you. Tonight's going to be a really great service. Tony Murrow is actually teaching tonight, and
Well, I taught this morning.
Yes.
But if you weren't here this morning, that's why you're here this evening.
You shall see him tonight.
So, and we already know it's going to be good because it's pre-recorded. So
There you go. But he's going to be talking out of Psalm 22, and I'm not going to give any more spoilers unless you want to, just because it's a quality message, and I'm excited for the rest of our church family that missed it this morning to be able to check it out tonight. So,
was I muted? You were probably before. Oh,
a few little technical issues.
All
we
right,
got it
sorry,
fixed though.
everybody. Yeah.
Give a mad shout out
Let's
to
try
Dan
again.
Hendrick. Yeah, so Tony's talking tonight.
You are?
I am. Yeah, the basic topic is unanswered prayers. What do you do with unanswered prayers, and how do you deal with that? It's a part of the Christian experience, and we need to know how to handle it. And I think Psalm 22 gives us great insight on that. So.
It's also a reality that God is still moving in the midst of that, even though it may not feel, like it. So I thought you did a great job, and I'm excited. Again, I'm excited for our church family to hear it. A couple things we do want to tell you is about next weekend, specifically regathering. July 12 is the day that the Raspberry campus is able to regather, and yeah, exactly.
I'm very excited about this. That means, everyone I run into on the street. I went down to Whittier for 4th of July yesterday, and I ran into somebody. They're like, "Hey, where do you work? You look really familiar." I'm like, "ChangePoint Church." They're like, "You're the video guy." I'm like, "Yeah." Okay. First question out of their mouth: Are we regathering for services yet? Everywhere I go, grocery store, this is what people want to know. When are we regathering for worship services? And the answer is, am I dead? Am I not?
You're dead.
So if you can't hear Tony, we just found that out. So sorry about that.
He
But
was
we
saying
are.
such cool stuff too.
He was. So Eric, tell us if I'm coming to church next week, I'm ready. I'm ready to regather. I'm ready to be among our family. What times do I need to come next week?
Well, we're starting at 9:30, and then we'll do it again at 11:30. So sometime before then, because per the mandates, we do have a 500-person limit, and that's in the building, counting staff and volunteers. So if you want to get your space, come early.
If though for some reason you're just not ready to regather with people, that's completely understandable. But here's what you can do: the online service is still going to be happening. It's going to be it's part of our new mission going forward, if you will. Tony Murrow is going to continue to host that. He's done a great job with that. Tony, tell us a little bit about the Commons experience moving forward, or the online service moving forward.
So we moved a few weeks ago to bringing the post service show. Kind of the bigger main Commons where we have guests and do something topical. We started bringing the recorded one from the 10:30 service through to the 6 because we were getting such high quality content. We had the steer waltz on there. We had the weavers. You guys have seen it. You guys know what we're talking about. So we started bringing that through to the evening service. So we're gonna fully kind of complete that transition next week. So in terms of what the content is going to be, we're gonna have 2 services: one at 10:30, one at 6 o'clock, and the video content that's contained in those services is going to be exactly the same. Exactly the same thing. So what will be different then is, of course, the people who are there. So all of our chats and all of our prayer requests and all of the other ways that we interact with each other as a church online will remain as kind of 2 independent services. So there's 2 in-person services, 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. Here at the Raspberry campus. So there is no 6 o'clock in-person service. And then there's 2 online services, 10:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. And that's the plan.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. Many of you have been even probably wondering or asking the question, well, what about masks? That's a great question. And
we've also been wondering the question, what about masks?
And if you for some reason didn't know this, Anchorage just came out with another emergency mandate or order. This past week.
EO13.
Yep, EO13, and that sounded way cooler, by the way, than what I read. But anyway, they're asking that everywhere we go in public that we wear a mask. And so we're just asking our church family to comply with that as well. We know it's uncomfortable. We know no one enjoys wearing a mask. But again, in the name of safety and trying to protect those that we're going to be among, we're just asking that you wear a mask. And by the way, the services are going to be about 60 minutes. We're going to continue to try to keep them short and sweet. They are family services. We don't have Adventureland open yet, simply because no one is ready for childcare and those kinds of things, especially in churches just yet. We'll get to that point. We're just not there yet. So it's going to be a family service, and having kids stay entertained and even fairly quiet for over an hour is not easy.
Definite challenge. There will be things available, though, for your kids, crayons and little packets and whatnot. So
Yeah.
all is not lost.
No, not at all.
Things will look a little different, too.
It's okay to worship God with your kids too.
Absolutely.
You'll survive. It'll be totally fine. Yeah, we were thinking about reopening Adventureland and what that would mean, and we just pictured for 15 seconds what social distance Adventureland would mean. Like, a kid comes to church and you're like trying to keep them away from the other kids and keep them away from the toys and do all this. Just sounded awful. So we're not going to do that.
Chaos upon pandemonium.
We're going to worship with our kids. So we've been worshiping with our kids in the living room. Now we'll just do it, in a very big living room.
Yeah. So long story short, we're excited about July 12. We're excited about being together again with our church family. Let's say hello to some people who are online now. Amanda Como, Scott Smith, good evening. Michael Frazier, Brandon Bacher, Gina Powers. It is good to see you. And thanks for joining us tonight. The other thing I want to tell you about is if there are any Tikahtnu people in the house tonight paying attention, hey, here's an update on kind of where we're at. As you know, we're waiting on the school system to tell us kind of what's going on. And so we've submitted a proposal. They should begin reviewing it if they haven't already soon. So over the next couple of weeks, hopefully we'll get a thumbs up to meet again at Bartlett High School. But right now we are hoping for August 2nd. So again, this is fingers crossed. We're hoping it happens. We'll keep you in the loop. But Tikahtnu, we should be back hopefully in August.
That'll be a big day, too, for the Valley campus. They're looking at August 2nd as well. Brand new location, though, so sports fans, stay tuned. That deal is in the works, and we'll get you details as soon as we have them, but probably not going to be Colony Middle School.
Look out.
It's going to be somewhere else.
Somewhere else.
Somewhere awesome.
In the Valley, even more awesomer than it is now.
If the Lord has been faithful to our church in anything, it has been in the finding and securing of locations to meet.
Indeed.
It's been a little bit ridiculous how faithful and extravagant the Lord has been. I mean, look at this thing that we're sitting in right now, this monstrosity. This is wild. We never would have been able to do this deal again in a million years, but the Lord was just, it was a present, and we're thankful for it.
In this fine space with these fine tables.
Yes, these quality tables. There we go.
Carissa Rush, hello. Vanessa, good to see you. Welcome to our evening service tonight at ChangePoint. It's going to be awesome. Tony Murrow is continuing our journey or a season for a psalm through Psalm 22 tonight. Man, I'm excited. I'm excited just again to get to hear it a second time. It's going to be pretty wild, man.
Thanks.
So.
Hey, yeah, Vanessa, if you're in the house, if you want to comment anything on the, Adventureland, anything, welcome, and the floor is yours, my friend. What did you have a question for?
Well, Vanessa did just mention, this is good to know. She's, Vanessa is our family ministries director, but she said, we want your kids to have fun, a fun, safe, and secure experience. And so way to reach out, Vanessa. That's a great word.
And they do. Adventureland has a fantastic track record of safety with kids, and kids really enjoy it. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
when we first moved into this building, they were talking about building that thing. I thought that was kind of bougie, a little bit ridiculous, honestly. I could not have been more wrong. That was the best money we ever spent in the entire history of the church, because kids beg to go to church. I remember when we were living in the Valley and it was like an hour commute to come in, and there would be days when I was just like, I don't want to. I'm looking outside, there's like 6 inches of snow, The kids are like, I got my hiker bucks, I memorized my verse, I got to get the store day. And I'm like, all right, fine.
Did they
get in the
sound
car.
just like that?
That was a perfect impersonation of my kids.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, have you guys had a good weekend, good family time over the weekend?
Amazing. Yeah, we We went down just to a random beach on the Kenai Peninsula and just parked and set out some tables and roasted some dogs and just splashed in the ocean and threw a Frisbee, and it was wonderful. It was a great thing to do before you preach.
There you go.
How about you?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah. Got some hiking in up in Arctic Valley, got to hang out with some friends, do some grilling out. It was a good day.
Had you done that Arctic Valley one before?
No. We've been trying to hike a lot more this summer, and it's been awesome, and it was great.
It's a totally different perspective on the city. Like Anchorage looks completely different from that far north.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, Arctic Valley's pretty amazing. Yeah. Spent the weekend out at Big Lake.
Ooh.
Been there almost 20 years and never been out there before, so.
Really? You've never like been asked to somebody's cabin out in Big Lake or anything?
Flown over it a few times, but never actually
You
set foot in Big Lake.
need to get out more, bro.
And context,
so.
context matters too, because it was 78 degrees, so it was like the perfect moment to be at the lake.
For water sport? Absolutely. Yeah. Did you have any
Get in
boats
past
or?
My knees, though.
Oh, you just waited?
Yes.
They have sharks.
A little too
I'm kidding.
cold.
I'm totally kidding.
So growing up in Hawaii, did you like surf and play around in the water? I mean, were you like a big like ocean person?
Love the water.
All about that?
Yeah, that's cool.
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's just in your old age that you're wading into your knees in Big Lake?
It's more the temperature. There's about a 20-degree difference between Hawaii water and Big Lake water.
And that matters.
There's a qualitative difference
Immensely.
Yes.
in the experience that you have. That's a good sermon illustration. I'll steal that sometime.
I was telling Eric this morning, yesterday I was driving, we were heading to Arctic Valley, and I saw this guy pulling a jet ski. I was like, man, that's a whole nother level of commitment to own a jet ski in Alaska, because you can use it for 10 seconds in the summer, right?
Oh, jet ski in Alaska is amazing. Jet ski is so fun. I mean, Big Lake is
they're
just
fun.
like, oh my
I know
gosh.
they're incredibly fun, but
So
I'm just
fun.
saying.
Yeah, it is.
mean-
it's a short season. It's a
Right,
short
exactly.
but wonderful season, you know?
Well, see, my girls, they spent all of 10 seconds dry, and they were in the water immediately.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it didn't even phase them.
It's good. So what's your review of Big Lake now that you've done it after 20 years? Have you
Oh, it was awesome.
10 out of 10, right? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
All right,
definitely.
there we go.
Lots of fun.
I've
good
heard,
friends.
I've heard good
people.
things. I've heard good things.
Absolutely.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our evening service. It's going to be awesome. Thank you again for joining us. Happy Independence Day weekend. And hopefully we'll get a chance to see you in person next week. If not, join us online at 10:30 a.m. on the
and
12th.
Commons afterward. We're just doing regathering details. Make sure that you know everything that you need to know for next week, because we are regathering here at the Raspberry campus and we're pumped. Woohoo!
Hello, ChangePoint family. We are so excited that you are joining us wherever you are this morning. In this season, it's been crazy, but what's really been fun is us enjoying our family time with our kids through our kids' worship songs. So kids, wherever you are, let's stand up, let's worship, let's sing, let's dance.
There's no space that his love can't reach. There's no place where we can't find peace. There's no end to amazing grace. Take me in with your arms spread wide. Take me in like an orphan child. Never let go, never leave.
Well, thank you, kids, for leading worship for us this morning. Today, we also have the special privilege of being joined by our student band. It's an absolute joy to see them worship and using their gifts for the Lord on a weekly. So let's continue to worship.
Come, let us worship our King. Come, let us bow at His feet. Come, let us worship our King. Come, let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. See what our Savior has done. See what His love overcomes. He has done great things. He has done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive, break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You've been faithful through every storm. Let's sing it out. You've been faithful forevermore. You have done great things. And I know you will do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. God, you do great things. Oh, hero of heaven, conquer the grave. You free every captive, break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. Sing hallelujah, hallelujah, God, above it all, and hallelujah, God, unshakable, and hallelujah, you have done great things. Hallelujah, God, above it all, and hallelujah, God, unshakable, and hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive, break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awaken alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You have done great things. Oh God, you do great things.
Sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. And my story isn't over, my story's just begun. Feel failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Sing, failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. The rival's not the end game, 'cause the journey is where you are. You never wanted perfect, you just wanted my heart. And the story isn't over if the story isn't good, no. Failure's never final when the Father's in the room. It feels final when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. In John chapter 14, Jesus says this: "In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also." When we enter into our Father's house, when we enter into his presence, shame leaves, disappointment leaves, because there is no room for those things in the Father's house. Prodigals come home, the helpless find hope, and love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Prison doors fling wide, the dead come to life. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Miracles take place, the cynical find faith. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Jericho walls are quaking, strongholds now are shaking, and love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. I said, love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house.
All right, good morning, ChangePoint family. How are we today? Excellent. Let's just even at home or in this room, let's just say great job, students. This is awesome. And man, what a blessing seeing the next generation, leaders that God is preparing now for the future. That's just incredibly exciting. Good morning. My name is Justin Terry. I'm one of the pastors here. And man, we're excited that you're here. It's Independence Day weekend. So on behalf of our ChangePoint staff and family, happy Independence Day weekend. I've got a couple things that I do want to tell you about. So here we go. I'm going to start with regathering for our Tikahtnu campus. So we have submitted the paperwork to ASD. They are currently reviewing everything. And hopefully we're going to know in the next couple weeks when we can officially regather. But we're shooting right now for an August 2nd date to regather at Bartlett High School. Again, that's hypothetical. We don't have any thumbs up yet from the school system, but that's where we're at right now. We're hoping that August 2nd we can get back together as a Tikahtnu family, and we're excited about that. So Raspberry, though, is going to be reopening officially next weekend on July 12th. Exciting. And I know many of you are just longing to come back together into a building with your church family and worship through music and teaching together. And so we're excited about seeing that happen. We've taken a lot of steps to create a safe environment as well as a place where we can still gather together. So next week, there's a few things that you need to know. The first thing is this. We're going to have 2 services, all right? We're going to have one at 9:30 in the morning and the one at 11:30. That may sound very familiar to you, all right? But if you're somebody that right now is like, hey, I'm still not super comfortable going out in public and worshiping together with our church family, that is not a problem at all. In fact, we encourage you, if you're not comfortable yet, man, stay home because we still have the online service available. That's going to kick off at 10:30. And Tony Murrow, one of our pastors who does a great job in this particular area especially, is going to continue to host that and be connecting online. So again, if you want to come in person, 9:30 or 11:30, but also we have the online service as well at 10:30. Another thing that I want to mention to you is wherever you go right now, whether it's Costco or Fred Meyer or Cabela's, they're asking that we wear masks. In fact, the mayor just had an emergency order this past week asking that everywhere in public that we wear a mask. And so we're asking our church family to do the very same thing. And we know that it's not super comfortable, but this is kind of where we're at the moment. And so in the name of blessing and protecting the people around us, we just ask that you wear your mask next Sunday when you come to church. If you don't have one, we will have some available. There'll be hand sanitizing stations throughout the building as well. Our team has done a phenomenal job in keeping this building clean and safe so people can come in and regather. So we're excited about that happening next weekend. You don't want to miss that. Well, in honor of Independence Day, I want to read something in just a minute that is incredibly powerful. This past week, I had an opportunity to chat with my father, and he lives in the Atlanta area. He was an Air Force veteran, flew the C-5, was also in the Desert Storm conflict. And so we were just talking about Independence Day, and he shared with me a prayer that he had written for our country, a prayer that's incredibly timely, but also one that really encourages just the asking of God to bring revival to our nation. So I'm going to invite you to pray alongside of me, and I'm just going to read this prayer that my dad wrote on behalf of this holiday. God, we stand before you today, grateful for your incredible blessings upon our wonderful nation. We are a nation like no other whose founding documents acknowledge that you, not man, are our creator and the giver of our rights and freedom. We will not forget those throughout our history who often, at the cost of their own lives, have stood against tyranny and oppression to uphold the idea that all men are created equal. While we celebrate our independence this week, we know that we are in a troubled time. An unseen enemy in the form of a virus attacks us and keeps us home in fear. Lord, we pray for the doctors, scientists, and researchers who seek a cure. Guide their minds to new and creative solutions, and guide our hearts to you for a peace that passes all understanding. COVID is physical, Lord, but an even greater enemy divides us spiritually. It tears at the unity of your body, the church. Help each one of us examine our hearts and repent of any hatred or prejudice which divides us. Bring us together in love and a spirit of reconciliation, not just to one another, but to you, O Lord. Only you can change hearts, and we pray that you will do so as well. And let us join with Solomon as he dedicated the temple, and he spoke these words found in 2 Chronicles chapter 7. When I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, or command the locust to devour the land, or send pestilence among my people. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. Heal us today, O Lord, and let this nation rejoice as a still shining light for all to see. And we ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
The same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh, yes, I will.
I was 15 years old on the day that I lost my faith. I was 5,000 miles from home, in a foreign country where I did not speak the language, walked in a room, and I thought that I was going to die. I understand there are kids with us today. The details of this story are R-rated. It suffices to say that I was trapped in a very abusive situation. I was very much in danger. I was being actively harmed, and I felt that there was no one to whom I could turn. And then I remembered God. God who will never leave us or forsake us. God who hears the cries of the afflicted, and I cried out to God for help in my hour of greatest need. And nothing happened. When my prayer went unanswered, I was left with only a couple of possible explanations. The first and easiest is that there is no God. I felt like I was speaking to an empty room because I was speaking to an empty room. If there was a God, then maybe it created the universe, but it didn't listen to prayers, it didn't concern itself with human beings. I preferred that explanation to its alternative, that there was such a God who had heard what I said and who had actively and personally chosen this. When I was 19, I had an encounter with God. I became a Christian. I received a new heart. I became regenerate. I started following God. And you might ask how I reconciled my newfound faith with this experience that I'd had 4 years prior, and the answer is that I didn't. I just ignored it. God and I did not talk about it. I spoke about it only to my most trusted Christian friends, and one of them gave it a nickname, my terrible no. Today we're going to look at a famous psalm. This is Psalm 22. It's not as famous as its neighbor, Psalm 23, the Michael Jordan psalm, but it is famous nonetheless because it had a big moment. Jesus Christ quotes the first 2 lines of this psalm from the cross. This is the worst moment in Jesus' entire life. He is facing his terrible no. Last night he was crying out to his Father for any other way. And the answer was a terrible no. Remember that these psalms are songs. What we are about to hear is the first half of the song that came into Jesus' mind to express how he was feeling in the darkest moment of his life. If he had had his iPod, this would have been the track that he put on. Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from my cries of anguish? My God, I cry out by day, but you don't answer. By night, but I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You're the one Israel praises. In you our ancestors put their trust. They trusted you and you delivered them. They cried out to you and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. Yet you brought me out of the womb, and you made me trust you even at my mother's breast. From birth I was cast on you. From my mother's womb you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. Many bulls surround me, strong bulls of Bashan encircle me, roaring lions that tear their prey open their mouths wide against me. I am poured out like water, all of my bones are out of joint. My heart has turned to wax, it has melted within me. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me in the dust of death. Dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet. All my bones are on display, and people stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garments. But you, O Lord, do not be far from me. You are my strength. Come quickly to help me. Deliver me from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs. Rescue me from the mouth of the lions and save me from the horns of the wild oxen. Jesus is experiencing a terrible no, and he thinks back on this song because in it, David was too. Now, before I continue, let me define this term. A terrible no is when two things happen at the same time. First, we ask God for help and no help comes. And second, we do not feel the presence of God. We ask for help and none comes, and we do not feel the presence of God. There are times when we face hardship, but we have a sense that God's in it with us. COVID has been like that for me. It's been difficult, but I feel like God's in it with me. There are other times of spiritual dryness. That's a natural season that we go through when we feel far from God. Those are difficult, but they are bearable if your life's going okay. When they hit at the same time, you have a terrible no. So here is the first thing we can learn from this text. The terrible no is a normal part of following Jesus. The terrible no is a normal part of following Jesus. See, when I received my terrible no, a huge part of why it impacted my faith so dramatically is that I had an expectation of God. I don't know if it was a conscious expectation or just something I'd picked up, but my expectation was this. If I'm a Christian, if I acknowledge God is real, if I go to church, if I go to youth camp, I was baptized at an FCC youth camp when I was 13. If I don't break any of the more serious rules at least, then God sort of has a responsibility to take care of me. At least on the major things, okay? Like I shouldn't get cancer. I shouldn't be in a disabling accident. I shouldn't lose my job, lose my spouse, lose my mom and dad. I shouldn't be attacked. I shouldn't face violence. That is God's side of the deal. It's sort of why I'm here. And so when I did it all right, when I prayed earnestly, when I prayed in faith, when I prayed in the will of God and nothing happened, I concluded that this stuff that I had learned about God was not true. That none of this was trustworthy. And I understand where I got this expectation. Jesus himself points to the birds of the air and says, God feeds them. How much more valuable are you? Here's how that verse got turned around in my heart. When the bad thing happened, I heard a little voice whisper in my ear, if you had been worth as much as a pigeon to God, he would have done something. That hurt the most. The rejection. I thought for a long time that I was mad at God because I had suffered. I think that was maybe 10% of it. The most terrifying idea that came into my head was that God had seen me in this place and thought that it wasn't worth his time. Maybe because I'm irrelevant. Maybe because I'm condemned. Not among God's chosen people. The point is, when I came before the face of God for judgment, I was found wanting. So I thought, fine, if you don't want me, I don't want you either. You can't break up with me, I'm breaking up with you. You can't quit, you're fired. That was basically my attitude toward God. It was. I didn't know how to deal with that emotional pain, and so I rejected God to avoid it. But I hadn't been rejected by God. And here's how I know. The same guy who tells us to look to God's concern for the birds is the guy who ends his life singing this song. My God, why have you forsaken me? And we know how God felt about Jesus. No one has ever had a greater or more public affirmation. Jesus is baptized and the heavens open up and the Spirit of God descends like a dove and a booming voice sounds out of heaven and says, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." It does not get better than that or more clear. That man ended his life with this song. When you face a terrible no, it does not mean that God does not love you. It does not mean that God has rejected you. It does not mean that you have been found wanting. Because it turns out that even when you're Jesus Christ, sometimes it feels that way. Want more evidence? Jesus' cousin John. Jesus says he was the greatest man ever to live. High praise coming from Jesus. Arrested under false pretenses. He's being held there and he's hearing about all these miracles that Jesus is doing. All these great things. And, Israel's turning, the Messiah is here. Israel's turning back to God. I'm a prophet of God, and yet I'm here rotting in prison. And so he sends his disciples to Jesus to ask, what gives. Listen to this interaction in Matthew chapter 11, beginning in verse 2. When John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of the Messiah, he sent his disciples to ask him, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" Jesus replied, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me." What's he saying? He's saying, yes, I am the Messiah. No, I'm not coming to help you. What do we call that, church? The most important prayer in the life of the greatest man ever to live. And he gets a terrible no. David, who wrote today's psalm, the man after God's own heart, cried out to God for the life of his firstborn son. Terrible no. Moses, Elijah, Peter, Paul, pick whoever you like. They all got terrible no's. Every single one of them. The point is this. I felt that when I received the terrible no, it meant that there was something wrong with my relationship with God. Honestly, it was probably more of a mark of authenticity. This is an experience that's been shared by almost every man and woman who's ever followed God, and it's shared by Christ himself. So if you are out there and you have lived trapped, believing the lie that your prayer went unanswered, that you received the terrible no because your faith was deficient or you were deficient or God does not love you, I pray in the Holy Spirit right now that he would liberate you from that idea, because it's just not true. It turns out, point one, a terrible no is a normal part of the Christian faith. Well, if that is the case, it begs the question, what is Jesus talking about when he tells us not to worry? He was broke, homeless, rejected, arrested, tortured, and executed. That is worse than anything that has happened to you in 2020. Yet that guy says, don't worry. How? And he's not alone. The New Testament and church history are full of Christians singing songs of praise as they face the worst suffering imaginable. What do they know that we don't? Here's point two. God's glorious yes swallows every terrible no. Weird point. Let me show you what I mean. Hebrews 12 said that Jesus endured the cross, quote, for the joy set before him. How do we know that's true? Because of the song that he sang. See, I only read you the first half. And this song is like Bohemian Rhapsody. It just changes in a moment and becomes almost like a completely different song. I'm going to pick it up in verse 22, and I'm going to read you through to the end. I will declare your name to my people. In the assembly I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him. All you descendants of Jacob, honor him. Revere him, all you descendants of Israel. For he has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not. hidden his face from him, but has listened to his cry for help. From you comes the theme of my praise in the great assembly. Before those who fear you, I will fulfill my vows. The poor will eat and be satisfied, and those who seek the Lord will praise him. May your hearts live forever. All of the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord, and all of the families of the nations will bow down before him. For dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. All of the rich of the earth will feast and worship, and all who go down to dust will kneel before him, those who cannot keep themselves alive. That's us. Posterity will serve him, and future generations will be told about the Lord, declaring to a people, they will proclaim his righteousness, declaring to a people yet unborn, he has done it. One of the questions that any thinking person must answer as they approach the claims of the Bible is, if there is an all-good and all-powerful God ruling the earth, why does he not do something about all the pain and suffering and injustice that we see all around us? The answer to that is that he has done and is doing something. The Bible tells us that the reason that we feel like the world is wrong is because it is. This is not the environment that we were created for. Let me ask you this. If we evolved on this planet purely through natural processes that select for traits that are best adapted to our environment, why was the result of that process a bunch of creatures who feel like the world is completely wrong? Shouldn't we be well adapted to this environment by now? Yet the world is full of sorrow, and we think it should be full of joy. The world is full of injustice, and we feel like it should be full of justice. The world is full of ugliness, and we feel like it should be full of beauty. The world is full of suffering, and we feel like it should be full of laughter. Why? Because we were made for another world. We are not fully native to this environment. The Bible teaches that we were not meant to die. We were not meant to grow sick. And so when we do, as much as anything else, it just feels surreal and wrong. Cancer? Me? Really? The Bible says that once people were in union with God, that we were his faithful and favored servants, and we walked with him in the cool of the day, but that we were convinced by an ancient and shadowy enemy that we would be better off without God, and so we had ourselves a little revolution. And that event brought on the advent of human suffering as we understand it today, for two reasons. First, it was the beginning of human death. Second, our egos, our focus, our attention, which were designed to be focused on God, collapsed inward onto the self. Thus, every human person is born with an innate nature of selfishness and pride. Ask my 15-month-old. Those two realities are the origin of all human tragedy. From your mother's death, to the atom bomb, to racism, to why you haven't spoken to your brother in 3 years, to the orphans on the streets of Mumbai, it all comes back to this. And the Bible summarizes this complex reality with the word sin. It is the reason that human suffering exists, and David, the author of today's psalm, knew all about it. He grieves the suffering of the innocent on so many lines of his songs, but David had hope, a hope in God. See, David's ancestor Abraham had a series of encounters with God, and he was told that God was going to make him into a great nation, and that through that nation he was going to reconcile all the other nations and peoples of the earth to himself. When this happened, God himself would rule, and there would be no more injustice, no more violence, no more hatred, no more pride, no more selfishness, no more suffering. But I don't think that David in this psalm knows how that's possible. That's why he writes that future generations will be told about the Lord, declaring to a people yet unborn that he has done it. He's saying, right now, I can't say he has done it because he hasn't done it. But I'm saying in faith, I believe that someday there's going to come some generation, some future people who will be able to look at their present moment and say, he has done it. 1,000 years later, 2,000 years later, the Son of God, the Son of David, on the cross, the very last words that he says in the Gospel of John, John 19:30, he says, "Tetelestai, it is finished." Scholars agree. That word, tetelestai, is a direct Greek translation of the last word of Psalm 22, asa, he has done it. And with those words, David's dream came true. Jesus Christ created a way to reverse the curse of sin, and he unleashed his Spirit onto the earth to transform the lives of people, and through it, the entire world. And that's exactly what it's been doing for the last 2,000 years. But wait, there's more. What David could not possibly have imagined, the Son of David, days after singing his ancestors' song, rose from death into a renewed and redeemed body with the unbelievable news that we would each be receiving one of our own. So not only will God end suffering and bring about a totally just and righteous world for his people to live in, those in Christ will have enough time living there to watch geological epochs go by. You'll be able to watch the river next to your house turn into a canyon over millions of years. You will plant generations of redwoods and watch them die of old age. And in all that time, you will never have suffered or been sinned against once. Never. That is God's glorious yes that swallows every terrible no. Think back on the oldest memory you have. A toy, a teacher's face, something a parent said, your deck in the backyard. Think of how foggy that is. How old are you? There will come a day when your entire first life on earth was hundreds of millions of years ago. If you're out there and you have received a terrible no, you may feel like you're never going to be able to get past it. Don't let resentment over a terrible no keep you from experiencing God's infinite, glorious yes. I promise you, in 10 million years, you won't care. This is the perspective that's revealed to us here. And over the last 6 months, I have been watching our focus do the exact opposite thing. We can't think about 6 months from now or 12 months from now because everything's up in the air. We have no idea what's going to happen. So instead of broadening our focus, we've been narrowing it. Narrowing and narrowing and narrowing, focusing closer and closer and closer on what's happening exactly right now. What's happening right now in the news cycle. What's happening right now on social media. We're totally focused on the immediate. God's answer to this situation is exactly the opposite move. Exactly the opposite move. Look at 2 Corinthians 4:18. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Why? Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Focus on the thing that's going to matter and going to last. We can't focus on 12 months. We need to be focusing not on today, but on the next 10 million years. And we need that perspective in this season because God's glorious yes swallows every terrible no. Now I want to shift gears, get very practical, and talk about how we should handle a terrible no. How do we handle a terrible no when it happens? The reason that I chose this psalm is that over the last 4 months, pretty much all of us have faced something new that we don't want to. For some of us, it's been easier than for others, but for everybody, the pressure and the weight of life has gone up. Quarantines, homeschooling, telecommuting, layoffs, masks, business disruptions, social and political unrest. Oh, and of course, a pandemic. Some of us have felt close to God during this time. Others of us have felt very far away. There are going to be a lot of things in this coming season that we are asking God for, and some of them we are not going to receive. And if we get that magic combo of feeling far from the presence of God and not receiving the help we ask for, we've got ourselves a terrible no. We need to be ready. Here are 3 things that we see the psalmist do in the moment of his terrible no that can help us. The first, remember God's goodness in the past. Remember God's goodness in the past. Look at verses 4 and 5. It says, "In you our ancestors put their trust. They trusted in you and you delivered them. They cried out to you and were saved, and they trusted in you and were not put to shame." David is remembering the story of God's work in his family's past. I have a story like that. You have a story like that. I can look back along my family tree and I can see the people who chose to honor and follow God, and I can see the positive impact. I can see the way that it transforms those branches of the family tree. I can see the impact that my father's conversion at 15 had on my life and the lives of my children. And so when I'm in the midst of a terrible no and I'm feeling so far from God and I'm wondering if all of this has been a dream, I can look back and I can see the evidences of God's working. I can see his footprints. And it builds my faith. You have a story like that. Remember God's goodness in the past. Second thing, keep asking in the present. Keep asking in the present. Look at verses 19 and 20. "But you, Lord, do not be far from me. You are my strength. Come quickly to help me. Deliver me from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs." Here's the insight. For 18 verses, he has been talking about how far away God feels and how completely ineffective his prayers have been. And after all of that, he is still crying out for God's presence. He is still petitioning petitioning God. What this means is when you're in a terrible no and you're sitting there saying your prayers and you suddenly come to that horrible realization that you are talking to a blank wall, you have to keep talking to that wall. It is imperative in that moment. Keep asking for his help and his presence. If you need to get real with God in that moment, do it. This psalm begins with the words, "Why did you abandon me?" If you take nothing else from this Season for a Psalm message series, take this. God is more than able to handle everything that you are, and he longs for that kind of relationship with you. Keep petitioning God in the midst of a terrible no. Finally, trust in God's promise for the future. Trust in God's promise for the future. You know, God says in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purposes. I used to hate having that verse thrown at me. I used to hate it because I felt like what people were asking me to do was say that one of the worst things that had ever happened to me was good. Not going to happen. But I've come to understand a little bit more of what this means. And in context, Paul is saying the same thing that we were talking about a minute ago. He starts that section in Romans 8, in verse 18. He says this, "I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." He's looking at an infinite amount of time in a renewed and redeemed creation, in a renewed and redeemed body, and measuring it against the sufferings that he's going through right now, and he says, not even in the same weight class. not worth comparing. They're just, one is just too big and the other is just too small. The present sufferings of a terrible no and the future promise of the glorious yes, there is no comparison. Jesus warns us not to put our hope in things on earth where moth and rust destroy, thieves break in and steal, and terrible no's lurk around every corner. It's just not a good strategy. It's not a good strategy. So, our three ways to handle a terrible no: remember God's goodness in the past, keep asking in the present, trust in God's promise for the future. So here's your pastor's challenge for today. Everybody ready for pastor's challenge? We got a two-parter today, two-part homework, and it's really like the first one only applies to part of you, to some of you, and so if it applies to you, then you need to do that one, and then everybody should do the second one. Like that's how we structured it. Okay, so the first one is this: if you have a resentment toward God over a terrible no that you have suffered in the past, I understand what that feels like. You have to get it out. You have to get it out. That resentment is a cancer. It will kill you. How do you do it? I want to invite you to write God a letter. And I got a prompt for you. Here's your prompt. This is the first words that you write on the page, and then you keep going from there. Here's your first words. God, comma, I am angry with you because. And just go from there. Physically write it down. Take out the Notes app on your phone, write it in notes, that's fine. Do it on a piece of paper. If you're a little more long form, it's fine, but write this letter. Second, regardless of whether a terrible no is in your past, it is in your future. Regardless of whether or not it's in your past, it is in your future. Here's what you need to do to get ready. Write down 3 important things that God has done in your life in the past or in the life of your family in the past. If you've got more than 3, go for more than 3. The more, I promise you, the more you have down on the page, the more valuable that document is going to be to you in the moment of a terrible no. I don't know what the next 12 months is going to bring. I have literally no idea, no insight. I know what the next 10 million years looks like. And it looks pretty good. This exercise will prepare you to deal with terrible no's when they come. And they will continue to come until that day when Jesus says to all suffering and evil and death, Asa, tetelestai, it is finished. Pray with me. Father, thank you for your glorious yes. I'm sorry that I let this come between us. Thank you for meeting me in that place and after. As we do our pastor's challenge this week, as we reflect on Psalm 22, as we reflect on facing challenging times, Lord, be with us. I want to pray for those who are struggling with resentment over terrible no. God, help them finish that letter. It's so important. For all of us, Lord, lift our vision away from the news cycle, lift our vision away from social media, away from the situation happening in our house today, right now. Lift our eyes to things that are unseen. Because these things that we're seeing are temporary, but the things unseen are eternal. You're a good God, and we love you. Amen. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our online worship service today. Justin and Eric are going to be out in the Commons, and they're going to be answering all of your questions about regathering, because we are regathering here at the Raspberry campus next week. In-person services, 9:30 and 11:30 a.m., and the online service will be 10:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. God bless you, ChangePoint family. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
All right, ChangePoint family. And Tony Murrow, thank you for an excellent message today out of Psalm 22. That was a great word.
That was brilliant. Welcome back, Tony. Good to see you up there.
So, Eric, one of my favorite things to do is, you and I talk a lot, right?
Sure.
In fact, you probably listen more than talk. But, one of the things that Tony mentioned at the very beginning of this message was obviously he kind of addressed this idea of a terrible no, right? A situation in his life where, he wanted X, but he didn't get anything, right? It was just a big giant no. But then he also mentioned, that eventually, he came to Jesus and his heart was regenerated. And that's a powerful thing. I mean, that isn't just a not a big deal, right? That is a huge deal. Yeah. And so I thought that was really a very powerful thing on top of the fact that he discussed, a terrible no. And I love the fact that he talked through the fact that even Jesus, while he was on the cross, is literally, due to the excruciating pain that he was experiencing, is crying out to God saying, God, is there any other way?
Right.
And how God ultimately gave him a terrible no, but then obviously through that was the glorious yes,
right,
which we were all incredibly thankful for.
Yes.
It was just a powerful word. Man, wow, that's good stuff.
That's good, and I like the fact that Tony encourages everyone to write down the important and the good things that God has done, because that's what sustains you through the terrible no's. Is that knowing that God doesn't change and He's good, and the fact that His goodness brings you through, some terrible aspects of your life, says that He's going to be there in the next one. So we all have our terrible no's.
We do, and so I want to ask you a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We're going to weave in and out of some life moments, if you will. But Eric, you're a pastor here at ChangePoint. You are the director of campus ministries.
Yes, sir.
You're one of our elders as well, but you also served in the military. So what did you do in the Air Force?
24 years in the Air Force. I flew C-130s. Got to literally circumnavigate the planet, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like one of the coolest jobs ever.
Yeah, pretty much.
What's the nickname for the airplane that you flew?
The Hercules. 4 fans of freedom.
4 fans of freedom. As long as all 4 fans are working.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's the Lockheed tri-motor.
Oh man, that's good stuff. So you're in the Air Force, and obviously you also went to the Air Force Academy. That's an incredibly prestigious reality.
Great place to be from.
Yeah, I can spell Air Force. That's about all I got. But no, that's an amazing school to have gone to. Let me ask you this: is kind of hitting pause real quick, but we're going to get back to this terrible no. But what does Independence Day mean to you, especially as somebody who was in the Air Force?
That's a deep question. I think anybody that, and it's not just the armed forces, anyone that looks to defend our way of life, domestically, internationally, whatever, the flag is a symbol that transcends a lot. So our vow, if you will, is to defend the Constitution and the flag of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that's a very serious thing. These are the people that run to the sound of guns and not away. So yeah, this is a big day. This is the reason that men and women that join the armed services do what they do, is to defend our freedom, to do everything that people seem free to do nowadays. We're here to make sure that everyone has the liberty to do that, to worship, to gather, to have their opinions, to voice them. That's a debt that a lot of people have paid.
When I think of Independence Day, most of my family were in the military. Both of my uncles were in the Army. Both of my grandfathers were Air Force pilots. My dad was an Air Force pilot. So when I think of the 4th of July, when I think of independence, I think I'm cognitive of those men and women who have gone before us, but also who are currently serving. And so thank you to our armed service men and women who are protecting our country. But when you talk about freedom, one of the things that I don't think we often think about a lot, mainly because we haven't had to deal with this unless we moved from another country where freedom is unavailable or we're oppressed, if you will. And the simple fact that we are able to freely worship any way that we want.
It's huge.
Huge. I mean, because right now there are people that are losing their lives in China, or losing their lives in Iran, or losing their lives in another country, fill in the blank, that doesn't allow for, especially Christianity, much less anything else.
Right.
But yet you and I are able to freely come and worship the God whom we believe in. So let me transition to this, Eric. So you were in the Air Force for 24 years. You retired in 2014.
Yep.
So I know, here it comes. There's a terrible no coming. So walk me through like your transition from the Air Force into what you wanted to do post-military.
Sure. So I was convinced I was going to teach high school history.
Right on.
Shadow of a doubt. Looking back, I could see God had worked some things and positioned me, through some testing and through some opportunities that obviously God wanted me to be a high school teacher. So it took doing a 2-year online program. It took me 4 years to get to the point. That's another story. But here I was, retired, about to step into teaching. And the last thing I had to do was student teach. So I started here in Anchorage, ironically at Bartlett High School, and where Tikahtnu meets, which is pretty cool. Yep. And worst 6 weeks of my life. It was
that good, huh?
Yeah, it was terrible. It's all relative, but for me, that was it was just physically and emotionally and mentally just kicking the butt. So yeah, and that was God at the end of 4 years, basically saying no to what I thought was my dream job and what I had really kind of pinned my future on. This is what I was going to do for the rest of my life, kind of thing. And Joy would say I was flat after that. After that 6 weeks and it ended. I was kind of adrift, wondering, where did I misread, if that's a thing, where did I misread what God had intended for my life after the military? And what did that mean for going forward? Because like I said, I had kind of pinned all my future hopes and plans on doing this thing, and I had nowhere else to turn. So
well, and I can imagine that may not have even happened very much to you. I mean, right? You went to the Air Force Academy, probably did pretty well there. You rose through the ranks in the Air Force. You had some pretty high honors and some pretty high offices that you got to hold down.
Sure.
And so then you're kind of transitioning, and I'm sure on multiple levels it must have been incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling going from the top of your game and kind of knowing exactly what you're doing to not having a clue as to where you're going to do next. Plus, you're unemployed. So
there's that.
What happens now?
So you received this terrible no. You've been gearing up for a long time. Not just you, but you're bringing your family along with you too. I mean, let's get real. Our families support us and have to deal with the good, the bad, the ugly, the ups, the downs, lefts and rights, etc. Tell me about the glorious yes.
So kind of out of the blue, and this was kind of the prelude to the yes. Out of the blue, I get a call from a guy I flew with in the Air Force, and ended up a week after my teaching dream had ended, I was in a job that I was completely unlooked for, I hadn't planned for, and that got us through the next 3 years. But then through those 3 years, coming on the elder team and getting to know guys like Scott Mariner and Rick Steele better, landed my true dream job a couple years ago, and that's coming on staff here and being able to be a pastor, and not just at ChangePoint, but just being able to be a pastor in general. That wasn't something that, if you'd asked me when I retired from the Air Force if that was a career path, I'd have said no way. But I get to hang out with guys like you.
Yeah, no pressure on that statement.
Yeah.
No, I love hearing stories. I share often with people that one of the things that I love about people is getting to know not just who they are, but kind of how did they get there? Right? Why do they think the way they think? Why do they act the way that they act? Those kinds of things. I think that matters. It's important. And I just love hearing that story. I can't even fathom what you went through after 4 years of pouring your life into something, this dream, and then nope.
Yep.
You know, but I'm incredibly thankful for the way that God not only provided for you right away with another flying gig, that's pretty cool, but also kind of opening your mind and heart to, hey man, I've got my hand on your life for something very, very different. And I have no doubt, Eric, that God has used you mightily, not just as an elder here at ChangePoint, but even you've been a huge blessing to me personally, to my wife, to Lee, to Chelsea, to Tim, to Lance and Karina, to Dan Jarrell, Dan Kraus. I mean, the litany of people that you've had the opportunity to work alongside, man, God's using you in that glorious yes to further the gospel. And that's a powerful thing, man.
Yeah. I mean, just the blessing in my life too has been, I mean, indescribable really. And again, it's something I never looked for 6 years ago. Never would have expected it, but yeah, God's glorious yes way swallowed up the terrible no in this case. So
Yeah. I remember when I was in 2005, I'd been working with an evangelist, and that's somebody that, you know, travels around the country to various events, speaking and teaching, and they kind of blow in, blow out. And since I was like 19, I really wanted to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and early on when I was like 19, 20, I think my motives were wrong. In fact, I don't think that I know that. My ego was driving more of that than I believe the Spirit of God. I hate admitting that, but that's part of my story, right? And
Sure.
God used some godly counsel to really humble me at the age of 20 in that specific area. But as the years unfolded, God continued to open up those opportunities. And I kind of came to this crossroads of, okay, my time at this internship was probably going to end within the next 4 to 6 months. What's going to happen next? I'm 20, almost 25 years old at the time. And I really wanted to travel and teach, especially, and I was mainly around student ministry, like that, you know, camps and retreats, those kinds of things. And I just remember begging God in the fall of 2005, God, what is it that you have for me? Because I don't believe in creating your own doorways and then walking through them.
Yeah.
I believe that God builds those doors and God opens those doors. Don't get me wrong, you don't just sit on your couch and do nothing. We need to engage the Lord and seek wisdom and all those things. But
Yeah.
I just remember asking God, am I supposed to do this with my life? And for months and months and months, just about every single week, I was asked, I had a booking request to come do something. Over the next 2 months, not one organization or one church reached out to me. That hadn't happened in years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I was awesome. I actually worked with a guy that I received a lot of recommendations from. That was probably the majority of. No was absolutely a glorious yes. And so I'm thankful for that, you know.
I think part of what I like about your story is I think that it's not a yes all at once, because I think even coming here, 4 years ago now, did you have any idea that you'd be in the seat that you're in now?
No, and I joked that, well, because Joel mentioned it, maybe one day when we have if we have campuses, you'll be a campus pastor. I was like, nope,
Yep.
not your guy. Funny how that works.
Famous last words.
Yeah. So church family, you know, there may be no's that you're receiving right now. There may be no's that you're hearing from the Lord, but the truth is God is always working. God has a plan. Make no mistake, God is continuing to watch over you. God is continuing to teach you and grow you, and he's probably preparing you for that glorious yes down the road. So take heart. And again, Tony, thank you for bringing us the word today. I'm thankful for this series because there have been things that hopefully we've learned every week that have just been incredibly challenging and encouraging.
Absolutely. It's been a real blessing of a journey through the Psalms.
Yeah. So the other big thing, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit, but the other big thing that's happening, and we kind of mentioned this before the service and then in the vision cast. But next week, we are going to be regathering together, and that's an exciting thing. But there are some things that we do need to talk through about that. So if I'm, Eric, I want to come next week. I want to be here. What times can I show up next week?
So we're going back to what we had before, minus the 6. So 9:30 and 11:30 will be our service times here. But now that we've started online, we're not going to stop online. So the online service will continue at 10:30 if for folks that just can't make it for one reason or another. So a few opportunities.
Yeah. Couple things to note, while the service times are at 9:30 and 11:30, these are family services, meaning that we don't have our Adventureland open, our kids space right now. We're trying to keep things as safe as we possibly can. And so the services will remain about 60 minutes. We're still trying to keep it in that timeline. We understand that keeping kids for an hour and 30 minutes in a service is just not a win. And so...
Right. There will be packs, for your kids, pages to color and activities to do. So
can I have one of those too?
Parents, don't fray. You get your own personal one. The room will look a little different. All the rows are 10 feet apart, and we're asking people, if you're not in the same household, put at least 6 seats in between you.
Yeah.
Just for distancing purposes. And then JT, we talked about the mask early on. You want to elaborate on that one?
Yeah, and I'm even looking at kind of our documentation. So basically, when you walk in, you have an opportunity also to get some hand sanitizer, and the doors will be open, so you're not having to open doors by yourself or anything like that. But when it comes to face masks, there's the Anchorage Emergency Order 13 has asked that individuals wear masks or cloth face coverings when we are indoors in public settings. And look, we're asking our church family to do the same thing. We know it's uncomfortable. We know we don't love wearing them, but again, in the interest of keeping others safe and healthy, we just ask that you continue to wear a mask. And if you don't have one, we will have them available to you at our information desk. And again, this is something that's kind of happening all over the place. I mean, if you go anywhere, you've got to have one. And so it's 60 minutes. Let's just try to...
Yeah, went to REI last week. Had to wait in the parking lot for a few minutes because there are only so many people that were allowed in. And then they were asking, hey, got your mask? And, folks were asked to go back to their cars and get them if they didn't have them with them. So, yeah, definitely not, we're not alone in this. But we're all together. Yeah, like you said, trying to keep others safe and healthy.
And another thing to mention is if you're somebody, we don't want anybody to feel pressure about regathering.
No, not at all.
We recognize that these are uncertain times, and every week there seems to be new information. There's more cases, more mandates, et cetera. And so we do want people to understand and recognize that we are not trying to pressure anyone and saying, you've got to come back, you've got to come back. If you're not comfortable right now being in public, especially in this kind of setting, worshiping with a bunch of other people, stay home. There is no pressure otherwise. And we understand even on the kids' standpoint, by the way, we're not telling you to all stay home if you have kids. That's not what we're saying.
So please.
But we understand that having kids can make things a little more challenging for a worship service. And with that said, when you are ready, church family, to come back to each of our campuses, our doors will be open.
We're here.
And we'll be ready.
Yep. Well, that's why we're keeping the online for as long as we can see into the future. We'll have the online available to folks, and if you've enjoyed it or been a part of it over these last 8 weeks, then that's what you're going to see.
Yeah. So, and I'm excited to see just how God continues to navigate our church family through this. We met last week as a teaching team as we're kind of thinking through, okay, what's the next series? What are one or two of the series in the fall going to look like? And Eric, I'm pretty excited about kind of where we're headed. We haven't made any firm decisions on that, but we are getting very close. So we'll probably unveil some of that in the next couple weeks. We're excited.
No spoilers now. Got to tune back in, show back up.
It's true. Well, church family, we are incredibly grateful to you. We're thankful to you. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Church family, wherever you are, just want you to know I love being a pastor here. I love our church family. We are honored to get to serve alongside of you. We miss you dearly. We're all praying that God continues to grow and change each of us. And we're also super excited about getting back together. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, thanks, Justin.
Yeah, thank you, Elder Eric Colonel Knight.
Pastor TJ, as Dan Jarrell likes to say.
Hey, Gerald called me TJ the other day. He's known me for 4 years. Come on, man. I see how it is, Daniel. There we go. Yeah, but we hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy this weather. Enjoy your families. Enjoy your friends. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you next weekend.
Next weekend.
See you later, church family.